I've seen some videos on The Escapist, Extra Credit, talking about how maybe AAA game design companies should like hire a small team of indie developers who then sort of give up a little creative license, but then get like enough money to actually make their games. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's what Activision's trying to do. They're trying to.
Well, and that's how that game company has been funded. Sony funds our games. So technically, we're not independent in that we get publisher funding, but you know, we do ask that we get to do what we need to do to make the game what it is.
I mean, the traditional publisher model is that the big publisher gives the indie lots of money so they can make the game. The question is, you know, what do you give up? And if you're giving up creative freedom, I think most indies would take an issue with that. But if you get to keep that, then all of a sudden that can be very appealing.
I think there's something real about the cachet of being indie, and one of the big reasons that indie developers are able to support themselves is word of mouth. And anything that gets in the way of spreading word about your game is really bad. And if you're a small indie that's not a well-known indie and you hook up with a publisher and you get a ton of money, it might, you know, to some extent hinder you in telling that story of being the one underdog guy or the 5 underdog guys and girls that are making a game. And so that's no reason to not take money from someone. Absolutely not. You should take money from someone. But at the same time, generating word of mouth and PR with indies is a big struggle for us. And anything you can do to tell a story about who you are and what your game is, I think, is really important.
Yeah, I would almost want to say that if you can be really passionate about something as an indie, it doesn't really matter what it is. As long as that comes through in your game, then I think people will see it. There's got to be that little sparkle, that little cubic zirconia at the center of your game. A tasty nugget.
I also think it's really interesting. I've been talking about this a bit with the guys at the studio and know some people that looking at the kind of Valve model, and then I think that's kind of what you were mentioning, Mr. Question Asker, where Valve took the back of their drop team and made Portal. They took the tag team and made Portal 2. I think they're doing something with IceFrog and DOTA. They're talking to the Minecraft dude. Like, they're out there actively looking to, in a maybe a friendly way, absorb small independent shops to create bigger games. And I think it's really interesting. And I think that's kind of like a choice that teams make when that opportunity arises. But I think that's the best, like, when I look at them versus, say, an Epic or them versus, like, the competition, I think what Valve's doing in terms of getting interesting and fresh design ideas into their studio, they're creating some of the best games with it. So maybe that's a model that more giant multinational conglomerates should be looking at, because it seems to be working fucking great for them.
EA's doing it a little bit now, too. Yeah. EA Partners is snapping up some of the bigger ones.
Yeah, but I mean, all these people actually are Valve now. Like, EA Partners is working with Clay and working with Hothead and stuff, and doing really cool stuff with them.
So if there's any Valve people here that want to buy me,
I'm available. All right, yeah, we got another question.
Yeah, quick one along similar lines. So I think That Game Company and folks like Q and the like are poster children for this. Are there any other sort of semi-mainstream games or studios that you would really recommend as promulgating what you'd call, you know, indie aesthetic with air quotes as appropriate?
Oh man, that's cute. You said the two that I'm the most familiar with. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts? Yeah. I mean, the reason that's a hard question to answer is because everyone that I know in the industry, for the most part, is involved in some way or another making something different and interesting. But they're not all even at independent studios. And so for me personally, it's like, I know guys that are working on really, really crazy stuff, say for a Mass Effect type title, you know, and they're just doing amazing tech. There's awesome work happening throughout the industry. So for me, I mean, one studio over another, maybe. It's just a really hard question for me to answer personally, just because I know so many people that work so hard in games. I mean, you don't go into games to make $1 bajillion. You go into it because you love them, you know, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the love. So that love is everywhere in the industry. It's at different places, at different proportions. You get a little more of it with a small team. It's
easier to see, right?
Yeah.
And it's like
Shine
a
through.
couple folk hanging out, talking shit. It's very easy to tell that they're passionate, but when you're, you know, trying to find those passionate people in a team of 270, they're all there, and maybe, you know, 250 of the 270 are passionate, but it's really tough to pick out those gems.
It's especially tough when you're hiring, which I am. I need some people. So if you're that guy on that team of 270 or that gal that's programming your heart out on something she doesn't believe in, please call me. I think
Robin's gonna get
that's...
swarmed after this panel.
Yeah, seriously, I have. Seen it. I actually had a question for everybody here, which was, you got to be able to manage people. That's what I'm looking for, managers. I wrote down some notes, and the one thing that really intrigued me was something that you actually said, Andy, which was this idea of the leaf nodes being interesting and not crappy in a user-generated content game. That is a great idea. Like, that's just a really good idea. It was a great observation. I mean, everyone on the panel said great stuff, but that was the one that I was like, circle, circle, circle. Somebody should be doing this. Like, is that what you're going to do after Monica?
Well, the problem with that, of course, is
Do it.
the problem with that is that you have around 1,000 leaf nodes compared to
Yes.
the 3 branches, right?
But what you have to do is, you have to filter players to the good stuff, which may be out on the leaf.
Yeah.
Right?
Does anyone here want to start up a Wikipedia with moderators of indie game development? We would welcome this.
I mean, and this is actually...
And I think that's actually true for any game, that like if you have a giant role-playing game, if the place that's way deep in the woods that you don't have to go to doesn't have anything in it, you'll never go in the woods again. It's not fun. But if you have this little glade with spiders that you've never seen anywhere else, and like you can talk to them, and they have fucking 12 legs, like you'll go to the 12-legged spider.
That guy won't go. He's worried about that.
We have another question.
No, I just want to add an addendum. What you were talking about, 3 branches, like 1,000 leaf nodes, that was something that in college my literary club actually came across. We were trying to do a group writing exercise and made this fantasy novel, or tried to. It got out of hand because we never planned a conclusion to it. So we just went, choose your own adventure, down. So I think that's the thing you have to plan out first.
Yeah, it's hard. Oh, planning. Who wants to do that? Do any of the panelists have a final thing to say before we close it up?
Hey, everybody should play video games.
Yeah. Thanks for playing video games. You guys are awesome. Thank you for coming out. Yeah. Go ahead.